Morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 132 in the book of Genesis. Today is going to be a great story about Jacob wrestling with God. Let me get right into the story. It's from Genesis chapter 32, and I'm going to start in verse 22. That same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his two female servants, his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. That's the name of a river. And he took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone. And then here's the great part. And a man wrestled with him until the break of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket. And Jacob's hip was put out of joint. As he wrestled with him, Then he said, "Let me go." This is Jacob talking. "Let me go, for the day is broken." No, the angel said, "Let me go, for the day is broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen the face of God, and yet my life has been delivered." The sun rose up upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of his thigh. So question number one is, who is this guy, this man that Jacob wrestles with, who knows his history, knows that he has striven with man before, and he knows that he's obviously striving with God at this point, and knows that he is tenacious and wants to prevail. And he knows enough and has the authority enough to change Jacob's name. Jacob tells us who it is at the end of the story, which is he sees God and is amazed that he lives to tell the story. So let's talk about this wrestling. So wrestling, we have a God that allows wrestling. So let's get our heads around this. So I know that he is sovereign. I know that he is all powerful. I know that he is, and though he is all powerful, he allows us to kind of wrestle with him and power with him and against him. It's kind of like a 4-year-old wrestling. You know, have you ever got on the ground with a 4-year-old and let him pound on you for a while, even though you were infinitely more powerful? And we see here that Jacob prevails in his striving. And what that means is that he shows himself strongly. He's tenacious in this, and he sees it through all the way to the morning. So in seeking God, keep seeking until you reach the end point, until you finish the race, until you see his face, until you keep the faith, until that day when you are found in him on your last breath. So with regards to his name, this person, this God who Jacob wrestles with, knows enough to change Jacob's old name. So he has authority, and naming usually means that one has authority over that person, care and authority. So naming means knowing, being known by, knowing well through and through. It's a thorough naming. And the name changes everything in 2 ways. Everything is changed, so the name reflects that. So the name changes Jacob. And it's also reflected that Jacob is changed, as we've seen through these stories with Laban. And so after he changes, he gets a new name. I think both of those things are true. And when God asks a question, he always knows the answer to it. So when he asks Jacob, "What is your name?" he knows what his name is. But I think Jacob needs to get his head around what his previous name is, which is deceiver. So this person, capital P, person, God, who's authoritative enough to give Jacob a new name that we use to this day, Israel. Now, Israel means strives. It means 2 things. It means Jacob strives with God. It can also mean that God strives with Jacob. God strives with us. So we strive with God, and God strives with us. Which is, the amazing thing is not that Jacob strives with God. That I understand totally. It's normative for humans in interaction with an infinite being that we would encounter some difficulty, and it would be a struggle and a striving and a wrestling. What's the amazing thing to me is that God strives with us, that he bothers, that he tolerates this, that he chooses to engage us, that he gets on the ground like the father who wrestles with a 4-year-old. So let's talk about duration for a second, and then the ripple effects. The duration is, it goes all night long. So when you strive with God, likely it's going to last a little bit longer than you might prefer. And the ripple effect, as you can see here, that has effect on the community of Israel. And if you have a wrestling alone, because that's where wrestling usually takes place, it's going to affect and bubble over to your not alone part. People are going to be affected by this, and they should be affected, and they must be affected. All right, so who are you? Let's give Jacob some credit, wanting to know the name of God. So if I asked you, what evidence do we have about you wanting to know the name of God and understand God or understand the name of God? Are you, I think this is where we're going to leave this today, are you striving to know the real God? I think my advice would be, have that striving be associated with his word in understanding and putting yourself under preaching, but also putting yourself under the word. I think doing this podcast or this YouTube video is a good way to start. And then come back tomorrow. We'll see you then.